friends, do I have a treat for you today? We have the author of the book, Manage Your Menopause Naturally, on the show. She's actually the author of this book and 27 other books. A world-renowned healthcare expert. She's helped tens of thousands of women around the world overcome PMS and menopause symptoms without using drugs and hormones. In 2018, she was awarded the British Empire Medal and was recognized as one of the 50 most inspirational women by Daily Mail. We are going to have all the links in the show notes at smbwell.com/197. And I am just beyond honored and thrilled to bring this powerhouse of a woman and this information to you all today. Buckle in, let's go. All right. And here we go. Welcome to the show, Maryon. We're so thrilled to have you here.
I'm really thrilled to be here.
This is exciting. Could we just start with the sort of backing up a little and explaining to the audience what inspired you to start helping women with their, on their journey through menopause?
Well, I think there were two things. First, I had helped women with premenstrual syndrome first, and that was because years and years and years ago, I was given 10,000 medical papers to sort into conditions by some doctors setting up the British Society for Nutritional Medicine when I was living in England. And I was on maternity leave after our second baby, and they didn't think I had much to do. So I got these papers and I found 200 on premenstrual syndrome. So we put a program together, and honestly, this was even before emails. We had tens of thousands of women, sometimes over 2,000 letters a day from people who were just feeling terrible, like a shadow of their former selves. And within the space of a few months, this natural program helped 96% of them, 94% of them, I think it was, to feel completely symptom-free. And in the early 90s, there were medical papers published on menopause. And so we tweaked the program and turned it into menopause program as well, because the research was showing that you could eat certain foods and drinks, and you could bring about a similar change in the lining of the vagina as you'd expect to see in women taking hormone replacement therapy. So fast forward a bit, my team and I were helping people on a one-to-one basis in the clinic, and we had a postal, I think we probably set up the first telehealth service ever in the world. We got heavily criticized for it in the beginning, saying how irresponsible to be treating people that you've never seen. But nevertheless, we did it. And then eventually in 2000, I think it was the end of 2017, I was persuaded to go on a Facebook Live course because I wasn't very technical, so I kind of shied away from it. And this person running the course showed me how to make films on my phone and post them on Facebook. And I made 4 of those. And within the space of 12 weeks, over 1 million women saw those films. And as you can imagine, I was inundated with the most horrendous suffering. And it was kind of 20 something years on since I'd started helping women going through menopause, and we see these incredible transformations. And I just felt passionately that women shouldn't be suffering like this anymore. And I felt like I needed to step up. And so we turned what was my 5-month program for menopause, which was helping 91% of the women be symptom-free. We turned that into a 6-week course because I thought I can't obviously help all these women on a one-to-one basis, but if I provide a course with all the science, I can point them in the right direction. And we didn't realize at that point that even in 6 weeks, we'd be turning their lives around. And so it's been an amazing journey for the last few years. And I'm really passionate about helping women and trying to get them back to a place of hope, because often they feel it's beyond hope. And in fact, our latest survey on 1,100 women showed not only are 96% unprepared for menopause, and 2/3 of them feel robbed of life as they knew it, but many women are actually mourning the loss of themselves, and their workplace, their relationships disintegrate, their self-esteem is in the bin, and they just feel that there's not a lot left for them. And you can understand that. I mean, 100 years or so ago, we weren't living much past 50, so it didn't really matter. But now, because 40 something is halfway for so many of us, we've got to, we have a choice. We're at a crossroads when we get to perimenopause, and we can either just let it all happen and grow old and feel terrible and be predisposed to things like osteoporosis, heart disease, and dementia after menopause, or we can learn to meet our needs, which is slightly tricky because the information out there is very variable. But if you learn to meet your needs and have what I call a midlife refuel, you can get back to feeling not only the best version of yourself, but absolutely turbocharged. And you can then get on and do whatever you want to do in the world, using your wisdom and creating a great effect rather than being curled up in a ball and giving up on yourself.
Yes, and yes. I love your message so much, and I love you sharing this knowledge out there, because I definitely, I mean, your stats are right on with what I see, and just this despair and hopelessness and fear of aging. And then, in diving into your body of knowledge, it just has provided me with more hope and inspiration. So one thing that has helped me, and that you just spoke of, is this, we used to live till age 50. And then, so it was sort of this like, okay, well, it is what it is, and moving on. But you have spoken about how the health issues that are associated with menopause in the moment go beyond the current moment, and how, as our estrogen levels decline, we are at greater risk for some of these diseases, and why then it would be helpful for us to do something about this. Could you speak more about that?
Sure. I mean, women have absolutely no clue, and that's the saddest thing in the world. I was on a book tour in Australia, and I was doing a book signing at Menopause the musical in the foyer of the theatre, and I was listening to all these women having conversations going past me as they went in and out, and they were saying, been there, done that, and got the t-shirt. And I'm thinking to myself, well, actually, you haven't, because we know that women have got nutritional deficiencies. We've done our own research, 5 separate studies showing that women very often have low levels of nutrients. And since then, there have been studies done showing that billions of women have got low levels of nutrients, which affects your brain chemistry and your hormone function. And that gets worse as you get older. And then on top of that, your ovaries stop producing estrogen, and they're never going to produce it again. So you're going to have empty estrogen receptor sites, which is a nightmare all in itself, because they're hungry for estrogen. And so they'll look around for the environmental estrogen, which is so harmful, that comes in pollution and plastic and pesticides and so on. And that can cause an increased risk of breast cancer, apart from anything else. But when you pass menopause, which is actually only one day,
right,
it's the anniversary of your last period. So you go from perimenopause, which is the 8 years leading up to menopause, to menopause the one day, and then the rest of your life you're postmenopausal. And so you've got to learn, when you're postmenopausal, you have a much greater risk of osteoporosis, the bone thinning disease, heart disease, dementia, diabetes. And the research shows that you can prevent all those things. So if you have the midlife refuel and you keep it going and carry on looking after yourself, you'll keep the factories open that are making the new bone cells and protecting you against heart disease like they did before menopause. Your vagina stays nice and moist, and your brain stays clear and sharp, so that you can remember what you went into a room for, and all that kind of stuff, which we tend to feel like we're fading away when we get to menopause if we're running on empty. You go into what I call economy mode, and you're a bit like a bucket with a hole in it. You just can't feel well because you're running on empty.
Well, and I appreciate all, and so like what comes to my mind is like, why are we at increased risk for all these, like the osteoporosis and the dementia and all? I think you briefly touched on, but that's, why?
Because we had estrogen before menopause that protected us. And then we've got, fast forward to menopause, you've got empty estrogen receptor sites, and you're no longer protected. So you're at more risk of these things, like, for example, heart disease, more risk than a man. Whereas before menopause, men had a higher chance of having heart disease than we do. So
that to me was a big aha, like, oh my gosh, when you hear of, heart disease being a big risk for older women, and then to put that together with like, and it's because we're no longer making estrogen. So why don't we do some of the things we're talking about in your book to make it so that we can protect ourselves? I love your sort of point with this, naturally, there are lots of things that we do as we age, our eyesight declines, and yet we don't just sit here and go blind. We get readers, we use some supplements and we help ourselves in this way, and that we can help ourselves in this way with menopause too. That it's not just a suck it up.
We can see that, you know when your eyes are failing, and so you go and take action. But for example, with osteoporosis, we're making up to menopause, we're probably making about 3% bone each year and losing about the same. But when you get to menopause and the estrogen runs out, you're just losing bone. And so women are much more predisposed to osteoporosis, but it's a silent disease. And you don't necessarily know that you've got it. And that's the horrendous thing, because it actually can be a killer. And we are totally in the dark about what's going on with our health when we get to midlife and beyond. It's actually very scary, because there's a wealth of published literature to show that you can sort all these things out. You can almost wind back your biological clock in the best sense of it. Not that we want to look like spring chickens, but we want to have a healthy body and a healthy mind. And we want to be able to still have great sex. You know, we don't want everything to shrivel up and dry up so that it all becomes painful and difficult. Our relationship survey, for example, showed that 70% of women felt switched off below the waist, and about the same number had vaginal dryness. So they just, they buy into the fact that that's how it is, because they've got, you know, to a certain age.
Yeah. So why do you think that is? Why do you think so many women accept the discomfort and stress of perimenopause or menopause?
They don't know any better. The doctors, I mean, there was a Mayo Clinic survey published in 2019 on doctors and gynecologists saying only 7% of them felt adequately educated to help women going through menopause. So they're not reading the literature. I know that for sure. And the women just don't get the information. We don't learn about, if you think about it, we're born as baby girls with millions of eggs, but we have absolutely no roadmap. And our mom tells us about our periods, probably, if we're lucky. But then who tells us about the rest? No one.
No. And you know, this is part of this, like what I see now in this midlife of like, suck it up. This is what happens, you know, yeah, okay, you have brain fog and vaginal dryness, doesn't ever, you know, whatever it is for us. I see that a lot because I work with some middle schoolers, and I like them sort of learning at an early age, like, oh, okay, right. Like, so you know, bleed for 5 days every month, like, suck it up, deal with it. Like, we don't want it to have any impact on your, like, don't let anyone know. And God forbid they see you carrying a tampon or, you know, a splotch on your pants. It's this like hidden part of how we are all here as a species. Yet,
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, when we did the relationship survey, I was in England at the time, and I went on a radio show, and we ran a course, a 6-week course, especially for women who had low libido and vaginal dryness. And it was unbelievable. Just in the first session, one of them burst into tears and said she'd never said the words vaginal dryness out loud before. And then another one burst into tears. And it was just, they never, it's like one of the best kept secrets.
Yeah.
And you don't even talk to your best friend about it. But here they were in a group, and everyone had the same problem. And suddenly there was no taboo anymore. You know, we all just get on, sorted it out. And within the space of a few months, they were back to having comfortable sex, and everyone had a big smile on their face.
Yeah. Well, and so that's where I think, like, it's this shame, and I know shame loves secrecy. So it's this shame of whatever it is, the vaginal dryness, the incontinence, the brain fog, the, you know, added weight around that, like us thinking that we're doing something wrong or there's something wrong with us. So we better just, and then we don't share and hear and learn from each other. And so that's part of why I'm so grateful that you wrote this book and that you're coming on this show. Cause it's like, blast that out of, I'm like, I am done with that shit. Like, we need to get this out there. The things that are normal.
Yeah, you're so right. What we're trying to do is change the paradigm. And I'm in the process of making a TV series. So hopefully that's going to help greatly, which is so exciting. But it's really letting people know that there's plenty of great information out there. And as I said before, my team and I literally have helped tens of thousands of women all around the world to be symptom-free and to go from a really, really dark place where they thought there was nothing left for them. They thought they may have early dementia, may have heart disease because they have panic attacks and palpitations that were mistaken for heart attacks. So they would see themselves in the emergency room thinking that this may be the end of life. And just feeling like their brain had been sucked away. And it doesn't have to be that way. They transform into, even in the space of 6 weeks, most of those symptoms are gone. And within the space of a few months, they're back to feeling so much better than they can remember. And I say that because as women, we're doing things for everybody else. Usually we leave ourselves to last. I mean, I had 4 children. I wrote all those books and ran a busy advisory service. And it's only when I fell over that I stopped to look after myself. And I see that in my patients, you know,
right. Yeah.
We're all the same. We do everything for everybody else. Well, you've got to get to midlife, and somehow we've got to make it common knowledge that women have a passage of right in their 40s to a midlife refuel. We take away the M word and the shame and the ageism, and we just give them a midlife refuel. And then you have the refuel and you get turbocharged, a bit like a racing car on a track going into the pit, having everything tweaked and coming out on the fast track and winning the race. And that's what it's like for women, because I can tell you stories about women who were on the verge of leaving the workplace, had been written off by their doctor, they had a mental breakdown, all sorts of terrible stories. And those women have in common today that they are normal, happy, functioning women, high functioning women, having an absolute blast, living life the way they want to. And that's what we all have a right to, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and that message just isn't out there. And that I love that, like your message of hope and hopefulness, that there are things that we can do, that it isn't just this sinking in, because to your point, that when we're in our 40s, or, you know, when most of us are going through the perimenopause, that period leading up to the midlife reboot or refuel, we're really like coming into our stride. Our kids are getting older, we're learning more about ourselves. It can be a time of great accomplishment, but then if, you know, we feel like absolute crap in our body, that can be very disconcerting and take away all that hope. So
yeah, and it's very hard in the workplace as well, because we know from surveys that 1 in 4 women are thinking of leaving the workplace or do leave the workplace. I know from patients, well, we did a survey on 1,000 women, 84% said that their productivity was affected adversely by their menopause. And Forbes says it costs $810 billion globally each year due to lost productivity associated with menopause. Now, we don't want to have more embarrassment and more shame when you've been climbing the corporate ladder and competing very successfully with men in the workplace. You want to continue to do that and not get bowled over by your hormones. And so it's so important. We've been working in a corporate environment, helping women to feel better so that they can actually get back to having clarity of mind and sleep well and not have the brain fog and so on, so that they can show up for work and do what they're supposed to be doing without feeling embarrassed to the point of thinking of leaving or even leaving. Because once they do leave, sometimes it's very hard to get back into the workplace when you're 50 something and you've given up your career. It's not so easy to get back in.
No, but also you have the mental piece of maybe the limiting belief that you sort of hit your peak and now it's all downhill from here. So then you may not even try to get back in. It's not a,
well, no, but I mean, the women I see, for example, I can tell you about women who left. There was one particular woman who had a very senior job in the government in the UK, and she took early retirement before I met her. And so when we got her better and she realized she didn't need to have retired, it was impossible for her to get back to the level that she was at before. The system just didn't allow it. So that was really sad. And so I urge women, if they are thinking that they're not fit for purpose anymore, and they're thinking about maybe they should leave the workplace or take a lesser role, just don't do it. Buy some time and learn how to meet your needs so that you can get yourself back into really good shape. It doesn't take that long. It just takes, you need to plug
6 weeks is the start. Like,
exactly.
Yeah. And I figure, I mean, your first 2 weeks, you're going to start seeing something, but it's also just that, you know, when you shift the mindset that, okay, that, you know, when we're thinking, as it's like media has us believe that it's all downhill from here, and now you're just going to be this old, you know, the vision of that old hag woman, you know, it's like, oh, right, now that's me. Then we don't have, you know, that's our thought. So then our feeling is not motivation or inspiration. But if we then have the thought, and based on the knowledge you're giving us, that actually there are things we can do, that this is a temporary blip, and let's, you know, take this 6-week course and let's do some of the really doable things that, you know, you have in there, just tweaking and looking at ourselves. I constantly say that midlife for me, is like, I'm now a Lamborghini. I like to think that in my younger life, I was a Civic, and like a little old Honda Civic that you could put anything in, and I would run, and I would, it's like this, yeah, I could eat sugar and sleep, skimp on my sleep, and I would keep running. But now I'm a Lamborghini and I need some more precise care. And it just makes me think of that more like helpful woman who's taking care of herself in a way that's really, really kind and luxurious. And could you speak a bit to the impact that the diet, the diet and menopause have, or the relationship?
Sure, that's a great analogy, by the way. I think
I'm always like, so my Lamborghini needs a little more sleep. So
I'll remember that. But the other thing that we haven't talked about before I jump into the diet side of things is men. And we did a survey on men. I must say they were more reticent to answer the questions than the women, but nevertheless, they did answer. And they told us that they felt rejected and frustrated. And they're very scared about having a conversation. And women are scared to have a conversation because they don't want to open a can of worms. Because if you think about it, if they think it's the end of life as they knew it, why would they want to talk about it? Because it would just highlight the fact that they were writing themselves off. And they were scared that their partner would want to go off and get someone else. So it's like the white elephant in the room. And so we have materials as well for men to help them to be supportive, because once they understand that this is just a transition, it is a transition. That's all it is. And when you get through that transition, you can come out the end of it feeling like, in fact, the men say they get back the person that they fell in love with. And so it's a really sweet story. And so I think that opening up, talking to your partner and going through this together makes you all the stronger for it in the end.
100. I hope that the ladies listening will have their husbands listen. I know that I have male listeners, and I'm so thrilled about that. And I am a mom of 5 sons, so I am very verbal and I'm very communicative with them, with, okay, I'm having my cycle right now, or wow, I just to keep normalizing it, that again, shame lies in secrecy. And it's this, having a more normal, nothing's gone wrong here. We have emotions, we have experiences, and just normalizing that again. So for women to have the conversation with men, because my husband has been very open, but very open in curious about my experience and what's going on and wanting to be supportive, and also open in just his own, I'm looking for another word than ignorance, because it's not his fault. It's just like, it has been a very, secretive, like, oh my God, don't ask her, like what's going on there, which is why with my sons, I want to be like, here's the thing, like you're bleeding, like just to take the shame and the secrecy out of it, that it's normal, and let the more we talk about it, I always say communication is lubrication. So
you're quite, I mean, in this case, literally as well, because
literally,
when women, for example, they think that they're never going to have life in the bedroom again, then everything kind of goes out the window, because that's the glue that keeps relationships together. So if you're going through it together, you can still have a cuddle. And
you can have a cuddle, you can say, I need a little more foreplay, I need a little, nothing wrong with you, can you do this? Like,
Exactly. And massage is good, and even just reminiscing about the good times, knowing that they're going to come back again will just help you and put a little bit of humor in it.
Yeah, nothing's gone wrong here. Yeah.
I'll go back to your question now. So the diet, so our successful program consists of probably 6 things. The first thing is learning how to meet your nutritional needs, because as I said earlier, the billions of women have got nutritional deficiencies, and we haven't got a clue how to fix that. So we're teaching the women how to consume the foods that are going to get their nutrients back into an optimum range, which has a knock-on effect to switching back the brain into normal mode, because the brain and the nervous system and the hormone system need a level of nutrients that are just usually not present. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, when you've got low levels of nutrients, you very often have foods and drinks, like, for example, alcohol will bring on flushes. Tannin in red wine, for example, locks on to calcium, magnesium, iron, and zinc and stops them from being absorbed. So we isolate the foods and drinks just in the short term that are going to lock onto nutrients and stop them from being bioavailable. So that's another part of it. The second main bit is foods that contain naturally occurring estrogen. So it's Mother Nature's estrogen. And you need to fill those receptor sites little and often, because they don't stay full for very long. And because the molecule in Mother Nature's estrogen is so similar to estradiol that you had before menopause, we can successfully fool our brain into thinking that we've got normal circulating estrogen. And it's amazing. So that's the second bit. The third bit is taking supplements that are being through properly conducted clinical trials. And this, I have to say, is a bit of a minefield because it's an unregulated industry. So lots of the supplements that are on the market, according to research, don't even contain what they say on the label, let alone be standardized and have been shown to be safe and effective. So we choose very carefully the supplements that have been shown to be good and will help us to have a therapeutic effect. Then there's some exercise. And I don't mean running a marathon. If you're not fit, it can be just dancing to your favorite music, going out for a walk with your dog, just getting yourself back to being active. Because when we are sedentary, we pile on the pounds because our metabolism slows down. We have less oxygen going through to our brain, so the brain doesn't function so well. And our mood sinks. So we need to release the lovely endorphins through exercise. So that's the second bit. And then people, if they're not very fit, they build up gradually. And then the next bit is doing some formal relaxation, because that's been shown to, and I don't mean watching TV, I mean proper like meditation or guided meditation or something you do at the end of a yoga session. Those sessions daily have been shown to reduce hot flashes and night sweats by 50 to 60%. So that's huge. And then it's looking after your bones as well, because the bones kind of melt after menopause unless you know how to get them back in good shape. So we focus on that. We're using diet, exercise, supplements, and these days we're using OsteoStrong as well, which is a bone loading system that people can access if they've got osteopenia and osteoporosis to reload their bones. So there's tons. I love the biohacks. There's all sorts of biohacks out there. There's another one, a red light therapy called VFit for vaginal dryness, which helps to realign everything that's going on in the environment in your vagina so that heals. And so we've got all these wonderful tools at our fingertips to help women to get back in the driving seat, really, so that they're in a place that they'd like to be.
Yeah. And so I need to just tell listeners that you specifically, the supplement, I want to return to the supplement and the estrogen piece. With the supplement, you specifically give example, like you give specific brands and names of the supplements that you recommend. So when you're saying that it's like this sort of minefield, like you deal with that and you give us the solution in the book. I've already added many of the things to my Amazon recommendation page for listeners, but that it is in all the books. So for listeners not to be confused, like, well, then what? Like you give actual things that can be found today to help with these things. My question.
I've named them, and even since I wrote the book, we've just literally in the last few weeks, somebody that we're working with has actually brought the key supplements together in a midlife refuel box. So that's going to be available very soon, and women can find them all in one place because sometimes they're a bit hard to find.
Oh, I wonder if I can get the link to that. Is that? Yeah, that's awesome. So my question to you, I'm still cycling normally, but I'm 50. So but I'm in this perimenopause period. When you're talking about estrogen and obviously diet, I guess if I'm eating natural estrogen, I'm forgetting the name of what they are,
phytoestrogen. Yeah.
Thank you. That my body will sort of accept what it needs and get rid of the rest. But would you suggest, a lot of my listeners are in perimenopause, would you suggest that they start using some of your supplements, or do you wait until that menopause period when you haven't had a period for a year?
No, look, if you think about the fact that our bone mass reaches its peak by the time we get to 35,
right.
We need to be, and perimenopause is 8 years leading up to menopause. So on average, it's happening in your early-ish 40s. You need to be learning to meet your needs as soon as you possibly can. Okay. And obviously, depending on whether you've got PMS or what else is going on in your body, we tend to create, you can either use the book and find your own way, or people that need a bit more help because they've got more complicated history or more complicated symptoms, then they come on our 6-week course, and we design a program for each individual person. And then we take them through the whole process. But it's never really too early to start. Having said that, if you pass menopause, it's not too late to start either. So this, what we're recommending is a way to find out what's going to help you and work for you, depending on where you're at in terms of your menopause journey.
Oh, so freeing. I love it. So yes, thank you. I'm like, I love it.
And also when you're going through perimenopause, your periods usually change.
Yes.
They're not the same. So they may be irregular, they may be heavy, they may be, you may be spotting or whatever it is. So there's lots of things that we can do, natural things, to help get that back on track as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So I cannot speak highly enough of your book, and or your body of work. So I'm going to have all those links in the show notes. Are you actively running the 6-week course if people are interested in signing up?
Yeah, absolutely. It's running all the time. We have amazing success stories. If you go to my website, which is just maryonstewart.com with a funny spelling, MaryonStewart.com, and you can see a film on there with some women talking about the amazing transformation they went through on the course. And then if you do the click down and look at the different solutions, you'll find the 6-week course on there. And yes, people can sign up anytime. As soon as they signed up, they get a questionnaire and diary to fill in, and then we get you going with the program, and you can then start get access, because it's tech-enabled course, so it runs on your dashboard or your phone or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can get in there and just start the process. And it's like coming into our family. It's such an exciting journey. I get excited every time new people begin, because I know that within a few weeks, usually 3 or 4 weeks, they start to feel so much better. And by 6 weeks, they're all smiling, and they just know there's a big light at the end of the tunnel. It's a huge relief.
I mean, I could sense that from the video also. It's just, there's such a spirit and just gratefulness. And yes, I love that. And your whole message again, that like this period of our life can be a time when we view it as exciting and rewarding and getting ready. It's like you're getting the Lamborghini ready for that fast track. So it's super fun. Yeah.
We can, I mean, heaven only knows the world needs us and our wisdom, at this time. And we need to be turbocharged so that we can do whatever it is we're meant to be doing to help, whether it's the family, the workplace, or the wider world. Women are so wise, and they've got such a lot to offer. It's an absolute crying shame if they end up curled up in a ball thinking that they're not fit to carry on.
No,
we have to change that. It has to change.
Not on our watch. So what do you most hope women will take away from your book, How to Manage Your Menopause Naturally?
Well, I get, obviously on social media these days, I get messages every single week from women who have been using the book themselves and have completely changed their lives. So these are women who obviously aren't suffering so severely, but nevertheless, it was significant for them, and they've got back in the driving seat. So you can do it. I've got all the information that you need about the 6-week course in there. There's everything from menus, recipes, meal plans. If you hate cooking, there's fast options, shopping lists.
I love it.
You're going to need to manage this process. And then if they need extra help, then at least they know that they can go and get extra help, and they don't have to sit and suffer, because suffering is something that you don't actually need to do.
No, that is one of the main messages I have gotten from your work, and that I would like listeners to take from this episode, is that suffering is not something that we don't need to just suck it up, buttercup here. There are many things we can do. You have people like Maryon here to support and guide us through this into this next great stage of our life. And I'm so grateful you came.
And my whole team have been through my program as well.
Oh,
so,
neat.
They're all grateful they went through it.
Yeah, of course.
Because they're feeling turbocharged. And so they're better able and very well informed to help other people who come to us for help.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for your time, and I hope you see a lot of my warriors in your class, and hopefully we'll all be buying your book.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.